So Mosquitoes by Stielman D'Antonio basically talks about how mosquitoes were brought over in dirty slave ships, like dirty European slave ships, and slaves were made to become susceptible to the mosquito bites because they were trapped in the boats. Anyways, that was used as justification for a lot of the premise of separating indigenous people, Africans, and Europeans from each other. So, like segregation and all that, and justification for slavery. Anyway, so the dominant groups, the colonizers, continued these dirty habits. They came over to this side, lived in Panama, Cuba, the Americas, South America, whatever, but still had all these water problems, irrigation problems, sewage problems. They were just throwing their poop in the streets and stuff, and transmitting and they're bringing in different diseases, and it would be like one mosquito at a time, but because that mosquito would then breed with other mosquitoes, like it would cause widespread disease outbreaks like yellow fever, malaria, dengue, etc. Anyways, so then that was used as an excuse to further discriminate against minorities, because they said that minorities already had the immune system to protect them, but also that the Europeans were very fragile and vulnerable to these diseases, so they needed to be housed completely separately so that their delicate systems could be protected. The same arguments used when they were talking about why African slaves were better in the fields, because they were stronger and darker skinned and could withstand the sun and had the dexterity for it. Just crazy. Anyway, so then somehow the mosquito basically just became a toy for a pissing race between a bunch of European. So yeah, pissing races between different white men, basically to get rid of the diseases, the malaria and stuff, but also to wage war and to use chemical methods to control mosquitoes. But like with the wars, usually the fighting wasn't even the reason why the wars would be over. It would actually be because of the diseases that they were spreading, which meant that in the first place they didn't even need to be having the wars. Like World War I was pointless, like it was dumb. And then the Vietnam War, we lost very badly because we didn't even need to be over there in the first place. Of course, Vietnam has a bunch of fucking mosquitoes. Sorry for the language. Anyway, so to combat all of that and to keep these other countries in secession, things like DDT and so on, insecticide-wise, were used extremely heavily, and they were supposed to also be miracle cures and, these great white hope type. Anyways, so things like DDT were introduced, and that started showing disease resistance within like 5 years. So it wasn't even working, but it was causing major health problems for human beings. So it had to be eventually outlawed. Like, we don't spray DDT anymore in the US. You can't use it at all, worldwide, I think. Anyway, but even still now, like, there's so many overlapping themes between what goes on with vector management and like where mosquito transmitted diseases usually are and how we treat them. Because of course, being a first world country, we have access to better quality chemicals and being able to utilize them a lot more, whereas more developing or first world country or third world countries don't have that yet, or they don't have the resources, nor do they have the political backing to even get to that level. Usually you have other layers of patriarchal systems where they don't necessarily want to support that, or there's some religious, racial, or other prejudice that is a factor of why their appropriate measures aren't taken. Also, there is the fear of just American aid in general. The book mentioned how in India they tried to do a widespread sterilization, like introducing sterile male mosquitoes that were sterilized in the populations to help with controlling the ones that were transmitting malaria. And then there was a rumor that the CIA was trying to sterilize the people of India, and so they had to shut down the program and couldn't do it again as of 2001 because of the mass hysteria that would go on with that. And I feel like we see the same thing with the Bill Gates stuff and them going to Africa and hearing people be like, oh, they're giving people AIDS. I don't know if that's true, but Tuskegee and syphilis also occurred, so that's a bioethics issue that should be addressed as well. Anyways, you really enjoy the book. I hope you read it. Yeah. Also, Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. Very pivotal piece and very integral to anything you read about insects, in my opinion.